My name's Marcia. I'm a senior staff attorney with the Electronic Frontier Foundation. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a nonprofit based in San Francisco, and we work to make sure that individual rights make it into the digital age. I work on our civil liberties team. I do privacy, free speech, security related stuff, and over the past several years I've done a lot of work on open government issues, and that's what this talk is about today, of course. We're going to talk about how to get your FBI file and other information you would like to get from the federal government. So we're going to talk primarily about two laws. The first is the Freedom of Information Act. This is a law that lets anybody ask for records from federal agencies. You can ask for whatever you want. It doesn't just have to be about you. You can ask for records about what the government's been up to in various contexts. It's pretty wide open, and there are no requirements about who can ask for records. I mean, even if you're not a U.S. citizen, you can use this law. And there's a presumption in favor of disclosure, which means that the agency has to give you what you've asked for unless there's a really good reason not to give it to you. So what are those reasons? This is basically a list of the reasons why they cannot give you something. And, I think some of them are pretty straightforward. It's classified information. It would compromise a law enforcement investigation. You see I have one down there that says privileged. I know that's kind of vague. Basically what that means is that if the government were in some sort of a civil case with somebody, they would be able to withhold it under some litigation privilege. So, this might be like attorney-client privilege stuff, this kind of thing. You might notice a couple there that are a little bit odd, like the geophysical information about wells. That's very specific. It's an interesting little post 9/11 development. And there's kind of this catch-all at the very end there. Other laws say it doesn't have to be disclosed. And basically what that means is if Congress at some point makes this decision that a particular type of information shouldn't be released to the public, then they can pass a law that says that can't be released under the FOIA. So just to give you an example, the National Security Agency has a special exemption so that information about its activities and operations wouldn't have to be released under the FOIA. And there are a few dozen laws like that. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, I wouldn't discourage you from asking about it just because it might be exempt. Just to give you an example, at EFF a couple of years ago, we did a FOIA request seeking information about a wiretapping technology, and that should fall squarely into some of these exemptions, and yet we still managed to get several thousand pages about it. So I encourage you not to be completely discouraged by the list of exemptions. You can still get some really good stuff. So the other law that we're going to talk about a little bit is called the Privacy Act. Now, this is a law that specifically lets you ask for records about yourself that are maintained by some federal agency in a system of records. And the thing about this law is that it can be used only by American citizens and lawful permanent residents. And if you fall outside one of those categories, it doesn't mean you can't get information about yourself. You can always use the FOIA to ask for this kind of information too. Remember, the FOIA is a broader law. It lets you ask for anything, while the Privacy Act is specifically records about you. And you can get the same thing through the FOIA. So if you are asking for records about yourself, it's pretty easy to know what you're looking for. But what if you are just interested in using the FOIA to ask for stuff that's interesting to you? Like, how do you know what to ask for and how to phrase your request? So the best way to do this is to pay attention, I would say, to the news. If there are interesting things that you're reading about that you find compelling, that you want to follow up on, you can learn about really interesting stuff just in news reports, press releases, government reports. If you hear about some congressional hearing where somebody talked about this FBI surveillance technology, these are all really good fertile grounds for formulating FOIA requests. And how do you know where your request should go? So the government actually is required by law to make this fairly easy. The first step for you is to figure out which agency or agencies might have the information that you're looking for. Keep in mind that you're required to ask for stuff that already exists. They don't have to create records in response to your FOIA request. So, you're actually, you have to think about where the documents or other materials that you're interested in, where those things are likely to be, and then check the agency's website for information about how to submit the request. Some agencies will let you do it electronically, which is super great and easy. For others, you need to send in a letter or you can fax it in. But the agencies are required to have these websites that make this information very easy and available to anybody who wants to send a FOIA request or a Privacy Act request. So how do you write a request? Over the years, I have come up with a few things that I think are pretty decent guidelines. First of all, describe what you want as precisely as you can, because you don't want a situation where you ask for something very general and they dump thousands of pages on you and you're combing through for the little bit that's interesting to you. So what you want to do is try to be as exact as possible in describing what you want. So, for example, if you're really interested in, whether the FBI has conducted an investigation, within a specific time period about a certain topic, I don't think you would want to request all records related to that investigation. Be very specific time-wise and subject matter-wise, and that should help you get the stuff that you're actually interested in. Write your request for a lay reader. A lot of people in this room are very, very technical, and you are probably, if you're interested in requesting something that has technical subject matter, you're probably going to know far, far, far more about that subject than the people who are actually processing the request. So it's important to write it so that they'll understand what you're looking for. You need to help them help you. My guideline is, would my mother understand this if she read it? So yeah, that's a very important thing. You want to write it so that the person who first reads the request is going to know what you're looking for and who at the agency is likely to actually have that stuff, and then can route it to that person. If there are news articles that you've read that relate to this topic, or kind of gave you the idea for it, go ahead and include that material. The better idea you can give about what you're interested in and what you're looking for, the better for everybody involved. And so if you can, provide an agency with some stuff that's going to help them figure out exactly what you're looking for, that's nothing but good. Think about whether you can get what's called expedited processing. So this is a concept that is in the FOIA, not the Privacy Act, unfortunately, but the FOIA, that basically says that if you can demonstrate a compelling need for information, then they will move your request to the head of the line and process it first. And the way that they define compelling need, they define it a couple different ways. One type of compelling need is if you don't get the information, it's likely to result in harm or threaten the life of somebody. So, it's unlikely you're probably going to be able to make use of that. But there's another one that says that if you are primarily engaged in disseminating information, so like if you're a journalist, and there is an urgent need to tell the public about the stuff you're asking about, then that's a good ground for expedited processing. So, the concept is basically, is this a breaking news story, and are you somebody who has a track record of journalistic activity and you might be breaking it? So there are some interesting questions at this point about exactly what a journalist is. And, I imagine a lot of you blog. And if you are in a position, to be able to show that you've written about a certain subject matter, and you've submitted a request that's relevant to that, or relevant to something else that you're interested in, if you can show the agency that you have this history of basically writing journalistic type stuff, then you might be able to get expedited processing, and that's completely awesome because then you can get it processed much faster than you otherwise would be able to. So if you can, ask for reduced fees. So under the FOIA in particular, an agency is allowed to charge you fees for the time they spend searching for the records, reviewing the records, and also any costs associated with duplicating the records to give them to you. But you can get these things waived in certain instances. So for example, they will not charge you search or review fees if you can show that you're a member of the media or that you're affiliated with an educational or scientific institution and you're not requesting something for commercial use. So, think about whether you're able to make that kind of an argument. Are you a student? Are you a fellow somewhere? Do you blog? If you can basically show that you meet some of these criteria, then you may not have to pay any sorts of fees like this. You can also get duplication fees either reduced or completely taken care of if you can show that disclosure of the information that you are looking for would be in the public interest and you're not requesting it for commercial use. So, this is basically making an argument that whatever you have requested would contribute significantly to public understanding of that topic. And so if you can, kind of check both of these boxes, you're in a position where you could, in theory, hopefully, get the material you're asking for free. So what if you're asking about yourself? Again, the FBI file scenario. You want to request your own FBI file. As I mentioned before, you can use either law. And in fact, just as a belt and suspenders approach, you might just go ahead and call it a FOIA/Privacy Act request. Again, it would just be FOIA if you're not a U.S. citizen or permanent legal resident, but if you are, why not? You can use either law to do it. In order to get information about yourself from an agency, you need to provide them some personal information so that they can ensure that they're giving you information about the right person. That is you, as opposed to somebody with the same name or what have you. So, I talk to some people who would like to request records about themselves, but they feel a little antsy about providing personal information to the government. But just be aware that if this is something you want to do, you probably will have to provide some information. You'll also have to certify under penalty of perjury that you're not providing false information. So, I would discourage you from, providing your name and then, providing fake information for the rest because you just don't want them to have that information, because you do have to promise that that you're giving them just accurate stuff and nothing more. Again, take a look at the agency website and see what their requirements are. You may actually find that it's very, very simple to submit a FOIA request or a Privacy Act request. They may have some sort of web form to do it, in which case it's just the simplest thing there could possibly be. And so that's definitely something that's worth doing before you go ahead and write up a request. And so once you submit your request, what do you do then? Unfortunately, the open government system is kind of broken, and they're supposed to actually give you stuff within 20 working days if it's just a normal request, but that almost never happens. If you're requesting something about yourself, then it's a fairly simple thing to process and take care of. Like, for example, if they just don't have a file on you or they have a very small one, then they may actually be able to meet the deadline, but that's really unusual. So once you realize that you're not getting the stuff that you want in a timely manner, you have some decisions to make about how you're going to follow up. You can just bug them. Virtually every agency FOIA website has a list of people who are required by law to make themselves available to you and talk to you about your request. So you can develop a fine working relationship with those people and bug them and ask them why they haven't processed your request in the amount of time that they're supposed to.